Hello everyone, and welcome to the second edition of No BS with Dr. Wood. We have a really interesting show today, and we're going to start getting into some of the very important issues. But I'm going to share a little personal story about God's grace, and since we just had Good Friday, it's perfect timing. And the goodness and the saving grace of God works in many ways, and I have lived life on the edge most of my time here on earth, and I've had several near-death experiences. And 28 years ago on Good Friday, I had one to where I would lay in the intensive care unit for a couple weeks and had surgery and could not walk for almost 4 months. But because of God's grace, I survived, and I will tell you what God allowed me to do afterwards, after being so stupid and reckless on that Good Friday many years ago. So stay tuned. This is going to get good. And cue the music. Welcome back to No BS with Dr. Wood. Now I want to tell that personal story. The goodness and the saving grace of God works in many ways. And 28 years ago, on this past Good Friday, I almost died. On Good Friday 1998, I was cutting a limb out of a tree. The tree was about 300 yards from where I now sit. I was near the creek and my boots were wet. I climbed the tree, cut the limb, lowered the chainsaw on a rope, and then I fell 25 feet when my wet boot slipped on the bark. I was not wearing a safety harness since I still thought I was immortal. I broke my back in 2 places in my left arm. I couldn't move anything from my waist down, and my left arm was useless. I remember lying on my back and looking up at that blue sky, not being able to move my feet. There was no cell service, and I didn't have a phone with me. And I was by myself, and no one knew where I was or what I was doing, but lying there I wondered what was going to eat me first, the possums or the vultures. Being a physician, I knew I had internal bleeding from that far of a fall, but I didn't know how much, and surprisingly I didn't lose consciousness. And that is when our ancestral blood kicked in. We are West Virginians. We are tough, and we don't give up. So with my right arm only, I started dragging myself the 100 yards to my four-wheeler. I'm not sure how long that took, but it must have been over an hour. But I finally made it. And then I did the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. And I'm not kidding. It was the hardest thing I have ever done in my life. I got on that four-wheeler with one arm. But I did it, and I drove myself back here to the cabin. I was able to drag myself off the four-wheeler onto the back porch, get the door open, drag myself to the phone, and call the operator. An ambulance crew found me about an hour later. They were 2 paramedics, and I told them, I'm giving you your first doctor's order and give me 5 milligrams of morphine, which they did because I was miserable. They got me strapped to the gurney, and I remember the ride to MSTAR emergency room at OVMC where I worked. As they rolled me into the ER, my brothers, Dr. Ralph Wood, Dr. Greg Wood, and Sergeant Tom Wood of the State Police, were standing there with Dr. Solomon, who was in charge of the ER. Dr. Solomon asked the paramedics what I had asked for, and they told him 5 milligrams of morphine. And I will never forget what Dr. Solomon said. He said, "My God, that's just enough for a large cat. Give him 10 more." And after that, I was in and out of consciousness. And I remember waking up in the recovery room after surgery, and Dr. Robert Weiler, and God bless Bob. He was the orthopedic surgeon. He was standing over top of me smiling. He had his mask pulled down, and he was yelling at me so I could hear him. He said, "Norm, I was able to beat all those bones back in place with the rubber hammer." God bless Bob. He was a great guy. And 2 weeks later, they allowed me to leave the hospital in an ambulance to my brother's home. I stayed there until I could walk again. I didn't have anything else to do for almost 4 months, so I started designing a new type of safety harness. And these 4 plaques on my wall are my 4 awarded U.S. patents for safety harness designs. It's pretty cool to think of something no one else has ever done. And I will probably have 2 or 3 more awarded patents in the future. And my designs are shown on my company website, elevatedsafetysystems.com. I have designs for anyone who sleeps or works on the 2nd floor or higher of a building, and those designs give them the ability to escape a fire or anything else. I have designs for firefighters, law enforcement, hunters, construction workers, and even bomb disposal experts. And what is unique about my designs is you can lower yourself to the ground even from several hundred feet. And if I had never fallen on that Good Friday, I would never have designed these harnesses, and I know that I have already saved at least 1 life. So it was all worth it. That's God's grace. That's the goodness of God. You must have God in your life, and you must be sincere. You need to be praying, and if you don't pray, I will pray for you because you're going to need it. So now let's shift gears. And this is going to be a multiple podcast subject. And that subject is, why isn't West Virginia prospering? West Virginia has an abundance of natural resources, much more than almost any other state. And as for our climate, it is stated that the 40th parallel north is one of the best places to live in the east. Well, the 40th parallel north runs straight through this cabin in northern West Virginia. Our state is perfectly located for whatever the future weather brings. We don't have the blistering heat of the south, and we don't have the winters of the north. We don't have hurricanes, rare tornadoes, and extremely rare earthquakes of any significance. We do have floods that we must watch out for, but the flip side of that is we have an abundance of fresh water, streams, and rivers, and that is extremely important. And we rarely have significant forest fires like they do out west. So what do we have left to look at as to why we are not prospering? Well, it's us. We have to look at us. And I know we are as smart as anyone else on this planet, and I know we are as hardworking as anyone else, so what is it? That only leaves our behavior, societal habits, customs, cultures, and our laws. And what in our lives gives us the best review or indication on how well we live our lives? That answer is our children. We must look at our children to see how well they are doing, to see how well we have done. And let's not look at just the categories that are doing better. That's like looking at a brand new tire on a car when the other 3 are flat. We can't be slapping each other on the back for one good play when we are losing the game. We must examine our worst grades, and by improving all of those, the other categories will improve as well. So let's examine the worst grades and see if there is a central theme or if there are multiple reasons for our failures. And let's focus on the most important aspects of our children, which is their health and performance. So we must ask ourselves, why are our schools failing our children? Or is it why are our children failing in our schools? You must look at it both ways. And why do we have the highest drug addiction rate in the nation? Why do we have the highest overdose death rate in the nation? Why are 75% of our 4th graders not proficient in reading? And why are 82% of our 8th graders not proficient in math? And while this is happening, we slap ourselves on the back for our 92% graduation rate. So I ask you, who are we graduating? Why are we patting ourselves on the back when our graduating kids can barely read, write, or do math? Is this a good barometer of how well we are raising our children? I'm afraid so. And it looks like we suck at it. So why are we doing less than a good job? To find that answer, we must ask ourselves a few more questions. And I am the former physician director of the West Virginia Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation. And these questions are, why are 75% of our adult inmates from single mother homes? And the flip of that is, why are only 25% of adult inmates from two-parent homes? That is a big difference. That is a stark difference. And why are 85% of our juvenile inmates from single mother homes? And why are 71% of our high school dropouts from single mother homes? And here's a big one. Why are 90% of street gang members from single mother homes? And the flip of that is, why do 80% of kids from homes with fathers never have run-ins with the law? Fellow West Virginians, this is crystal clear. This data is screaming. And this all comes back to the home. In the lack of father participation, in the lack of father-enforced discipline, in the lack of teaching good Christian values by both parents. And we have been doing this for the past 60 years. And we are failing in every metric that can be scored. Now we must ask ourselves, why? Why have we allowed this to happen? Why has our children's homes become so ineffective for a good upbringing? Why isn't the father there? Why aren't we teaching more Christian values? We don't want our kids to end up in prison, but they do. We don't want our kids using drugs, but they are. We don't want our kids to die from drug overdose, but many do. So how did all of this happen? How did we as a society allow this to happen? We're not stupid. We had been doing great for the previous 350 years in this country. We had good, strong families. We had good, strong mothers and grandmothers who ran the homes. We had good, strong fathers and grandfathers that provided for their families. And when was the last time you and your family all sat around a table and had a meal together away from the cell phones and the TV? And when was the last time you took your children to your parents' home for a Sunday dinner where you all sat around the table together? We were all doing so well. And then something terrible happened. And I believe I know that answer. And this is going to be a hard pill to swallow for many of us. And I am just as guilty as anyone else. And it's going to be even harder to turn this around. And I'm going to explain all of this to you and what we must do to get our home back on track to save our children. And it is our children who are going to save all of us, our state, and our country. And if we don't do this, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren are doomed. And our country will collapse in about another 50 years. And the data doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. Many of us won't be here in 50 years. It won't affect us. But it will affect our future families, our state, and this nation. And it is up to us. It's up to us, this generation, all of us, to start making these changes now, or it will be too late. And there's no finger pointing here. I'm not blaming anyone. We are all human, and we all make mistakes. We are all responsible for what has happened. And I have said this before, we have been lied to for decades, and we believe much of this. Or we just went along with it because we didn't know any better. We were all gullible. This was all new. It looked enticing. And we all drank the Kool-Aid. And this is the kicker. This is the core of this problem. We have all been the victims of one of the most successful psychological operations that was ever devised by our enemies. And I will show you the proof. And I know many of you are thinking right now, what the hell is he talking about? Well, I didn't understand this until I was a special agent. I wasn't exposed to this as a West Virginia state trooper. I didn't fully understand how the world really worked until then. I didn't understand the intelligence operations. And this was the first time I was exposed to this. One morning I walked into a Title III wiretap room in San Francisco, where we were listening to a Colombian cocaine smuggling operation. During the night, some more information had come in and was written on the blackboard for the other agents that would come in the morning to see. We had been wondering how this group came into the money that was needed to start their extensive operation. And these guys needed a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And on that blackboard was written, and I will never forget this, Russia, KGB, gold. The KGB was giving gold to this smuggling organization to get them started so they could bring drugs into the United States to kill our kids and to addict our children. And you would think, why would they be doing that? Well, they were doing that for the same reason China has been shipping the precursors for fentanyl to Mexico for decades. These communist countries are our enemies, and they will do whatever they can to wreck our society, to make us less strong, to cause more societal problems, to bankrupt us if they can, to weaken us so they can take advantage of us, to destroy our core, which is our families and our children. These types of intelligence operations have been going on since the end of World War II in 1945, and they really took off in the 60s and 70s. These types of operations play the long game. Our adversaries understand that to damage our society, it will take decades, and they are willing to wait. And we allow this to happen. We are a free society, and we allow these types of operations to flourish within our borders. We have freedom of religion, we have freedom of speech, and this allows us to be taken advantage of. Now, I would never, ever advocate for us to limit our freedom, but we must get smarter about this and prevent our own adversaries from taking advantage of us with our own freedoms used in our own destruction. I saw this again firsthand with my own investigation to the Russian military and KGB, who were attempting to bring 100 tons of narcotics into the United States and San Francisco. And this is what the TV series will be about, of my time as an undercover agent in the government. The Russian military and the KGB were trying to accumulate $100 million to be used towards a planned coup in 1989 of Russian General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev. They wanted him gone. They wanted him dead. The hardliners in the Russian military and the KGB believed Gorbachev had become too friendly with President Reagan and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher of the UK. The coup members called themselves Red Sword, and I was able to stop them. And the coup of 1991 failed because they didn't have the money to bribe the generals that were needed. But today, George Soros, Neville Roy Sigam, and many others who are communists are funding Marxist ideological organizations and funding the election of communist-leaning politicians all over this country. This is all being done to destroy us, and our freedoms are letting them do this. In China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have been the largest sponsors of cyber crimes in the U.S. for decades. Nothing has changed over the past 60 years except our enemies' tactics have evolved. Our enemies have been hitting us in every way they can, and it really took off in the 60s and the 70s. And this is what caused most of our problems. We all drank the Kool-Aid, and you are going to be surprised about who was filling the cups. Well, I see I'm running out of time for this podcast. I hate to cut this off at this point, but we need to. So on the next No BS with Dr. Wood, we're going to get neck deep in how all of this happened and what we must do to turn it around. This is the tighten up your jockstrap time, men, and ladies, tighten up your panties, because this is going to get rough. We must face what has been done to us and by whom, and we must straighten this runaway train out before it takes us all over a cliff. So, until next time, this is No BS with Dr. Wood signing off. God bless all of you. God bless West Virginia, and God bless America.